Hello, my name is Isaac Kumi, and welcome to my CS Apply project presentation. So for my project, I am building a backend framework on the Deno.js runtime, and my supervisor is Professor Todd Warren. Now, the 21st century has seen a major improvement in the way applications are built. It has moved from building static application to dynamic application, and this has, however, placed a high demand on efficiency, reliability, maintainability, and scalability of codes. Now, to remedy this, developers came up with web backend web frameworks. Now, web frameworks are abstractions of programs that come together to make programming or building application more fast and more reliable. And the problem with these frameworks is that they are complex, and two, they are not beginner friendly. That is why Fly-Deno framework is here. Now, Fly-Deno is just like any other framework out there, but it is built on a Deno.js runtime. It is secured, powerful, and very fast and beginner friendly. Now, these are the components of the Fly-Deno framework. Fly-Deno has routers for receiving requests. It has controllers for communicating between views and models for data, and a template engine for interpolating views. And these are the functional requirements of the application. So the user has to, or the developer has to define endpoints for accepting requests, create controllers to communicate between data source and the view, and view for displaying and configuration, environment configuration. These are the non-requirements, non-functional requirements. Application is secured. It doesn't consume much space. Related works. So in the JavaScript space, I found two backend frameworks, which are the Express.js and Adonis. So Adonis uses TypeScript compiler to compile TypeScript files in Deno. It has migration. It's very, very powerful. But the problem I have with these frameworks is that they are not modularized. Over here, I'm going to compare Express.js routing to the Fly-Deno, that's the proposed framework routing. Now, on the very top here, this is how Express does its routing. So it has a router class that has various HTTP verbs, and it has a callback function, and the user does whatever you want to do and return data. Now, this is what Fly-Deno routing looks like. It's just a JSON. It doesn't require the user to be writing callback function and all that. So the user just have to define a JSON object with a name, which is optional, path, and a handler. So the handler is in two parts. The first one, before the @ sign, is the route, the controller class, and the one after the @ sign is a method that will be called when this endpoint is being called. Again, I'm going to compare Express routing, Express controller to the Fly-Deno controller. Now, Fly-Deno makes the user's work very, very simple. It has hidden most of the complexities under the hood. So the user just had to define the shape of the data that he wants to return. So over here, we have a test class that accepts request, and it is written a template and a test. So the test is the view name that will be called, and data is the data that user want to pass into the view. It is very simple and very neat. Now, when it comes to Express routing is being integrated into the router. A controller is being integrated into the router. So users who don't understand callback functions may have to go ahead, spend more time understanding what async functions are, what certain things are, before they can start using the framework. But with Fly-Deno, you just have to define a JSON endpoint, return a JSON endpoint, and there is a render function under the hood that processes the request for the user. Now, there's a system architecture of Fly-Deno. So Fly-Deno has, a client visits, sends a request, it goes into the backend. Now, the backend fires a request to the router, search the router, find the path, and it's being processed in the Rusty V8. So the Rusty V8 is the main engine that processes Deno code, and it makes call to database and back, and so forth. Now, I would like to walk you through the application. So a client visits a browser, hits an endpoint. Now, when it hits an endpoint, it moves straight into the JSON route.json, which is the place where the endpoints are being stored. Now, when it gets here, it finds the handler which matches the endpoint that the user enters in the browser. So after getting the handler class, it proceeds to get the controller method that is attached to the handler class. Then when the controller is found, it makes a request to the database to check whether the user wants to pull something from database and display. If there is, it sends the request to the DB, it sends the data to the controller, and the controller sends it to a handlebar template engine. So the handlebar template engine is responsible for receiving data from the controller and process it and interpolate it into the view. So it finally displays it to the browser. So these are the tools and libraries that were used to build the framework. So we have Deno.js runtime. That's the main runtime that processes incoming requests and responses. So we have TypeScript. TypeScript, the main language that is being used to process them. We also have Deno standard library. So like HTTP file system. So the HTTP library is what I use to spin up the server, write, communicate, get incoming requests and response. And also there is an SQL database driver that I use to make connection to SQL database. Now, these are the challenges I face while building application. So Deno is new. It was released just last year, and it's new, and most of its libraries are not in their stable version. So sometimes when you add it to your application, it ends up blowing everything up. And there is an overemphasis on security. Now, before you run the application, you need to pass certain flags to. So for instance, if you want to access network, you need to allow network access. If you want to access environment variable, you need to pass certain flags that will allow you to run the application successfully. Now the demo. So for the demo, I'm going to build a simple app with a framework. So these are the folder. This is the folder structured application. So it has a command line for running the application, and the public folder is the folder where the templates are being kept, and we have the source. And inside the source, you have the app, so the controller and everything. So I'm going to define. I've already created a sample demo HTML, just a simple HTML without CSS, and it has 3 headings. Now, header 1, this is header page. So it takes the data from the controller. Oh yeah. So the routes are stored inside the route folder, and when you go inside, you have a list of routes. Yeah, basically JSON routes. So I've defined 2 routes over here. So demo about demo name, this one. So this is what I'll be using for the demo. So I created this endpoint, that means if I visit /demo home in the browser, it should go to the home controller and call this home demo home method. Now let's go to the home controller, which lives inside the controller folder. Now this is the home controller. Now we have a couple of methods over here, but this we are going to use. So when I hit the endpoint, the application will call this function, this method, which is the demo home, and it will return a demo home. Now this is the template. This is a file name that will be called, and it's here, the demo home.hbs. Now when it is called, it will pass this data over here into the view. So that's over here. I'm doing data.title, data.name, data.supervisor. So this is where I'm getting the data from. So when I run the app, the template engine will interpolate these values into the view. So let me run the app so that we see this in action. So we run the app using sh-fly. Yes, so the app is running on port 8000. So if I visit port 8000 in the browser, okay, localhost ports 8000, then demo home. So it's returned this one. Let me change so that we see. Let me change this one to about. Then change this add coconut to this. Let me add prof to this. So I'll shut down the server and run it again. So if I visit, refresh, see it has changed. This is about page, the comic governor, the professor, don't worry. This is what I've planned to do. Right now, the framework doesn't have any command line utility for generating models. So I'm planning on building command line utility for generating controller and model scripts. And I also want to make an asynchronous connection to multiple database instances, and also a command line utility to auto-generate CRUD scripts. And I also want it to support front-end frameworks like React Vue and Angular. And also more templating. Right now, it supports only handlebars. So maybe in future, I'll add EJS, Jade, and Path template engines to the framework. Yeah, so I would like to thank my supervisor for his patience and for his insightful comments. I also like to thank my faculty members for providing me the building blocks of programming and business concepts. I'm also grateful to my friends and my families. And thank you so much.